is Dunc Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, Dunc Holder. Pleased to be joined by Darin Gantt of Pro Football Talk, fellow Hall of Fame voter with our own Jeff Duncan, and a connoisseur of champagnes of beers at maybe a local CBD bar. Maybe I've had once or twice with him in history of life. What's up, Darin?
Yeah. Are they a sponsor? Can we say their name on the air?
We can kind of do whatever the hell we want. So yeah, you go for it.
All right, we'll always have Lucy's, Larry. It was a special night. I think it changed my life in a lot of ways.
Probably for the worse.
Lucy's has that effect on a lot of people, so yeah. This isn't the first time.
Yeah. Hey, Darin,
That's
appreciate.
what I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
I appreciate you jumping on the show. Look, just wanted to get your thoughts, kind of bounce some things off of you. Let's just start off with the NFC South. Look, you're based in Charlotte or the Charlotte area, and have been around this division. And as far as going into this season, kind of seeing some of the off-season moves that some teams have made or some of them haven't made. Just kind of what are your thoughts on what's kind of going on and the landscape of moving forward right now?
Well, it's been kind of interesting watching those four teams develop this offseason. I mean, the Saints have been in kind of the same spot the Falcons have been in, almost held up by their quarterback contract, not able to do as much stuff as maybe they would want to kind of shore up some areas that were problems last year. I mean, really, the Falcons are frozen. Until they can get something done with Matt Ryan, there's not a lot they can do. Obviously, you guys know how the Breeze thing's hung over everybody's head down there. The Buccaneers have been really aggressive, and they've gone out and spent a bunch of money and made a bunch of moves and done a bunch of things, but they also had more ground to make up than anybody in the division. And even with all the stuff they've done, I don't know that I would pick them to be anywhere other than fourth in this division going into next season. I still think, of the four quarterbacks, they've got the least of the four, and they've made some aggressive moves to kind of put parts around Jameis Winston. But I just think, until he becomes a more consistent player, it's going to be hard for them to take that next big step to join in that club, with the Falcons, with the Saints, with the Panthers, it being toward the tail end of the NFC playoff hunt.
Darin, what is going on in Carolina? Larry and I have talked about on the program extensively. We understand kind of the plan in Atlanta, maybe to some degree in Tampa. I don't know what's going on in Carolina. Are they trying to get younger? They've obviously let Kurt Coleman go, Charles Johnson, Jonathan Stewart, Star Latulier.
Yeah.
What is the plan there? Because from the outside, it just looks like there is no plan. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, they walked into this offseason without a huge surplus of salary cap room, and part of that's because they had a bunch of good players. I mean, and they've got a bunch of good veteran guys who are nearing the ends of their practical lives in the NFL, if not their contracts. I mean, if you think about guys like Greg Olsen, guys like Thomas Davis, guys like Ryan Khalil, guys like Julius Peppers, I mean, those guys are a lot closer to the end than they are the middle of their NFL careers. So they feel like they've still got a pretty good window of at least a year or two because, I mean, let's be honest, if you begin with a former MVP in Cam Newton and a former Defensive Player of the Year in Luke Kuechly, that's going to give those guys a pretty good place to start. I think that creates a pretty good floor for them that, I don't know how bad they're going to be as long as those two guys are each on the field. Now, again, there's questions about Kuechly and long-term longevity and what, concussions might do to his career and that kind of thing. But Luke has played at, one of the highest levels any middle linebacker in the league when he's been on the field. So I think they're still good. I think there's some obvious issues. They needed to fix that offense based on what was out there last year. And I think as much as anything else, as big a free agent acquisition as there's been in the NFC South, Norv Turner represents a huge upgrade at coordinator. I mean, not to throw any rocks at Mike Shula. Lord knows I did that for long enough when he was here. But I just think Norv has a better grasp on the ways to maximize what Cam Newton does. I just think, whatever you might have thought about the guy as a head coach, he's always done a good job as a coordinator with a lot of really different kind of parts. And I think putting him into a situation, here with a lot of the same personnel. I mean, they've made some moves at wide receiver, but not big dramatic moves. I just think this was kind of done for Cam to push Cam Newton to a new level, and we'll see if it works. I mean, we'll see if Cam is receptive to the things Norv wants to teach him, but, you know, regardless what you think of their receiving core, and it's still not great, but an offense with Cam Newton in the middle of it, with Christian McCaffrey maybe learning and taking on a little bigger role, and with Greg Olsen, you know, they've got the opportunity to do some things. We'll just see how Cam takes to what Norv's teaching him.
Darin Gantt from Pro Football Talk joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. Outside of the on-field issues, the ownership. What's the latest there? I know you and I were talking a good bit during the owners' meetings, and look, Jerry Richardson was not there, and of course
Sure.
there are suitors floating out there. What's kind of the latest as far as where this ownership goes?
Larry, I am going to stick. My initial reporting on this topic sent me to the conclusion that the Carolina Panthers were about to be bought by some billionaire. It's kind of like my annual Kentucky Derby pick of some horse. They are in the midst of it right now. They've had two guys in already to sort of tour the property, take a look at the stadium. Right now, there's a little bit of jockeying. I think there's some posturing going on the Panthers' part to try to get this bid to a place it wants to be. But, you know, I think the one salient point everybody's got to remember is Jerry Richardson chose to put this team for sale. Jerry Richardson is going to sell it to whom he pleases and in the manner in which he pleases. So I think there's some people in the league who have agendas that are maybe trying to push this guy, that guy. But ultimately, Jerry Richardson is going to decide what he wants to do because this is basically his last big decision. You know, with the Sports Illustrated story that came out tail end of the year, he is, you know, obviously disgraced is now the adjective that gets used with Jerry Richardson, disgraced NFL owner. But he is going to sell this thing the way he wants it sold. There were reports of a guy named Michael Rubin from Fanatics who is from Philadelphia and was talking about bringing in a partnership of guys that included Sean Combs, Steph Curry, and some other people. And I just don't think Jerry Richardson chooses to do business with them. I just don't think he wants to sell his team to those guys. So as you know, there was a report a couple weeks ago that Rubin's group might have dropped out when the price reached a certain point. But I think realistically, Jerry Richardson just wasn't ever going to sell it to him.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what kind of struck me, Darin, is the reports that the valuation for the sale might be around $2.6 billion. I mean, that's an amazing number and speaks, I think, volumes to the health, the financial well-being of the NFL. You know, Roger Goodell gets beat up by everybody, but when you look at the ownership groups, they're not beating him up because they see the price of their tickets on these organizations just going through the roof. They're skyrocketing.
Yeah, and I tell you what's going to be interesting in the next couple of years, Jeff, is if the Panthers sell for around 2.5, and that's kind of the ballpark I think most people think it's going to come in at. With the Bills having just sold, you know, for reports put that between 1.2 and 1.4 billion in 2014. I mean, you obviously see a huge appreciation. The thing I wonder is that going to trigger more teams to want to sell? I think there's some groups that are in flux. You've heard there was a lot of talk last week down in Orlando, people wondering if the Broncos might be on the block in a couple of years. And honestly, you know, the Panthers are an attractive purchase because that stadium's basically bought and paid for. If they're worth 2.5, I would think the Broncos are worth significantly more than that based on their history, based on, you know, the location and some other factors. But I think everybody is realizing what a good business it's in. So I wonder if we're going to see the Broncos. I wonder if we're going to see the Titans. You know, obviously, Mrs. Benson tried to put out some of that speculation last week, saying she would never sell the Saints, never encourage. But, I mean, I think it's going to be a realistic and reasonable question as long as teams are valued this way.
Darin Gantt for Pro Football Talk. Hey, Darin, I appreciate you jumping on the show, my friend.
Absolutely, boys, anytime.
All right, Darin. That's Darin Gantt, Pro Football Talk. You can follow him and all of his work over there and on Twitter at Darin Gantt. All right, let's take a break right here on the show. When we get back, Drew Brees ripped off